What the American Girl experience taught me is that girlhood in the US is incredibly expensive, that it is rooted in consumerism and overconsumption, and that it is part fantasy, part reality, and part brand. And I'm not the only one. And so, of course, as a girlhood studies scholar, I already know this. However, the American Girl experience 100% confirmed this information for me, and that is why I am researching American Girl. I didn't grow up with American Girl as a part of my consciousness. I actually didn't know of American Girl until halfway through my PhD program when I began to research dollhood as a part of my work on Black girlhood. That's when I had encountered the story of Addie Walker, American Girl's first Black doll, which was launched in fall of 1993 and then updated in fall of 2014. I had learned of her 6-book collection and went straight to the bookstore to see if I could find the collection at an affordable price. And all I could find was the first book of the series, and that cost me $3.48. And the book belonged to a girl named Amy, which I assume she donated after she grew out of her American Girl phase. When I first got the book, I thought about what Amy thought about Addie and Addie's story and wanted to ask her why she decided to purchase an Addie doll. Does she even still have Addie in her possession, or did she donate Addie as well along with the books? But since I couldn't find any more of the books at an affordable price, I actually had to abandon the project because of finances. To research a cultural object like American Girl does take a substantial amount of research funds. Because even getting my hands on copies of the books at that time for less than $100 online was nearly impossible. So I abandoned the project until now. Now, 6 years later, I have returned to my research on American Girl dolls, especially now that millennials and Gen Z are rekindling their love for American Girls and taking that rekindling to social media. In February 2022, the New York Times released an article titled "Dolls and Drinks for Likes and Clicks," featuring influencers Harry Hill and Serena Kerrigan, who were both 27 at the time. And Hill is actually known for his American Girl-based comedy on social media. The article links to photos of Hill dressed up as Samantha Parkington, and Samantha Parkington is part of the American Girl Historic Collection and was one of the first dolls released by American Girl in 1986. The article also links to a video of Serena Kerrigan getting her Samantha doll checked at the store's doll hospital for STIs. I'm personally not sure how I feel about this stunt, especially seeing that American Girl dolls are aged at 9 years old. But obviously, the staging of these stunts are a part of the comedy and the humor. The basis of my research is around this conundrum. How do adults play with dolls that is outside of the socially acceptable realm of being a doll collector? And do adults, especially adult women, have access to this kind of play that was once an important part of their girlhood? Girlhood studies scholars Claudia Mitchell and Jacqueline Reed Walsh, in their book chapter titled "Theorizing Tween Culture Within Girlhood Studies," explores how girls use dolls to act out their consumer-based fantasies through imaginative play. They argue that dolls like Bratz and Barbie allow for girls to live out their desire to grow up while paradoxically still being able to hold on to their childhood at the same time. In the article, they write, "As we have observed in our field site visits to teen and tween doll sections of toy stores, similarly there is a fascination of interplay of wanting to grow up, teen culture, and wanting the security of childhood play to be found in these artifacts." But what about the desires of Hill and Kerrigan? Is it the opposite? Is it to return to the safety of childhood while maintaining the privileges of adulthood? Besides reading some of the captions and the comments, I didn't dig too deeply into the motivations of both Hill and Kerrigan. However, I did find their work to be really, let's say, inspirational for my research. How do we understand their desire to play with dolls? You might already know where I'm going with this. But in case this is your first time learning about my work, just indulge me for a moment. I can't help but think about Addie Walker and her story of enslavement and how that impacts this returning to the safety of childhood. I mean, I've been wondering, can Addie as a doll allow for this kind of play as an imagined body that was once enslaved and ran away to freedom? I also wonder, could we laugh and find humor and emotional connection to these viral skits if Addie had been the doll chosen for the adventures of both Hill and Kerrigan? And this is where the work of my research starts. So last December, I traveled to the flagship American Girl store in Chicago, Illinois, to purchase an Addie doll to reconcile for myself how does one play with a once enslaved doll. So, like Hill and Kerrigan, I wanted to know if Addie Walker can help me return to a sense of childhood joy and play. Or does Addie as a doll construct a different understanding of fantasy and play? I stayed at the Ritz-Carlton, which is one of the 8 hotels that offer the American Girl experience. A night stay at any of the hotels are pretty comparably expensive. However, I chose the Ritz-Carlton in particular because the hotel is directly connected to the Magnificent Mile, which is the indoor mall where the American Girl store is located. As you can see, the Ritz-Carlton package came with a bed for my doll and a special gift from American Girl, which was a Frosty Frills vest. The next morning, I had an appointment with my personal shopper, which also included a personal tour of the store. I got there a little earlier than expected, so I'm just browsing until my appointment time. I felt like the store was also a doll museum. There were hundreds of dolls to choose from, all with intricate costumes and storylines, and it was really interesting to think of the store as not only a store, but also a curated space that showcases the history of American Girl. My personal shopper's name was Grace. She and I had actually spoken on the phone a week earlier to discuss my shopping needs, and when I told her that I was a researcher, she was really excited to tell me all the reasons why she loved American Girl. And so now that I think about it, Grace seemed like an American Girl come to life. She was bright and bubbly, hardworking, and spoke to me as if we had already known each other. The information she provided during the tour was so well detailed. I was extremely impressed by her ability to memorize nearly an hour's worth of information and recite it so naturally. I don't know if it's because of Grace's enthusiasm or because of all of the girls and their families searching through the store and eating at the cafe and visiting the salon and checking in with doctors and the nurses at the doll hospital, but I quickly found myself feeling more invested in American Girl as a concept and feeling connected to their vision of highlighting girlhood and girl stories as an integral part of American history. Here's me on the Star platform after making my purchase. And at this point, I am ready to take Addie out on some Chicago adventures. My first adventure with Addie was to go see the Family Matters house. I am also writing about the show Family Matters and its representations of Black girlhood. So since I was in Chicago, it was an opportune moment for me to visit. The original house from the show was torn down and remodeled in 2019, and the remodel does have a plaque commemorating the show. And this house next door is where Steve Urkel would have lived. Across from the Family Matters house was a park, so I took Addie there to play until we could no longer take the cold. We then made our way to Winnetka, which is about a 35-40 minute drive outside of downtown Chicago, to visit the Home Alone house. We then Ubered back to downtown Chicago and roamed the streets looking at all of the pretty holiday decorations before heading to the Sky Deck, which is a tourist attraction, where Addie and I then had an impromptu photo shoot. We ended the night back at the hotel where we had a final photo shoot before packing up to catch our flight back to San Diego early the next morning. I'm not going to lie, American Girl had left an impression on me. I arrived a critic, but left with an appreciation for what the brand was trying to accomplish in terms of prioritizing girls and their girlhoods. Now let's get back to present day. I must admit that when I returned from my trip, I had so many more questions. And so, of course, I began to think about what the next steps were in order to find the responses to these new questions that I had. This led me on a 10-day road trip on the Underground Railroad from North Carolina to Pennsylvania to retrace the story of Addie's run to freedom. I guess what I wanted from the American Girl experience was not this luxury getaway, and don't get me wrong, that was honestly a privilege to experience. But what I wanted was to see the importance of understanding American history through the lens of girlhood, which was the original inspiration for the development of American Girl. It was actually after a trip to Colonial Williamsburg that American Girl founder Pleasant T. Rowland decided to combine her love for the toy industry and her love for American history into younger age dolls in order to provide an alternative to the baby dolls and adult dolls that had consumed girlhood play. So knowing that story was the impetus in taking my second trip, so I look forward to sharing with you what I learned about girlhood and the Underground Railroad in part 2 of this video. Thank you for watching, and Addie and I will see you next time.